I've got the enviable task of talking to you about laptops and toilets, which is actually, by the way, the description I have inside the business of what I'm responsible for. But it's actually much more exciting than that, I hope you'll find in the next 20 minutes. I've been with Unilever about 30 years, and no, I didn't start work at the age of 12, by the way. I've had a multitude of roles. One or two of you got that one, anyway. I've actually, a large part of my career has been in emerging markets, so I feel in this space I've got a lot to bring. I've actually watched a couple of the presentations. I saw Peter talking about technology, and I'm going to talk about Lever Edge, by the way, Peter, as part of my presentation, which is what Peter talked about. I've lived in Africa, I've lived in Asia. I actually have met some of you when I was in Singapore, when we had the conference there about 4 years ago. And last year I was given a great opportunity in Unilever, which was to run, as James said, the new Global Business Services organisation. And I know you've had presentations in the past talking about separate pieces. And I want to talk more in the next 20 minutes about what we're doing in terms of bringing the integrated organisation together, what we're doing to drive sustainable growth, to make Unilever a more agile organisation, as James said, and while reducing costs, and that's an important component of our role. And there's something in that sentence I want to come back to. It's not either or. I think many businesses think there's a choice here in terms of investment and service and so on versus cost, and actually we believe we need to be doing both. We need to be doing both adding value, adding service, but also bringing costs down at the same time. But I thought it was worthwhile we start by me just covering a few minutes the journey that we've been on over the last 4 years, because what I inherited, actually a tremendous amount of work had been done, going back to 2010, when Unilever took the decision to establish enterprise support, which was run by Pascal, and I know Pascal presented. And that was bringing together finance, HR, and IT services into one centrally managed organisation, as well as starting to focus on areas like workplace, so that's offices, facilities management, travel, for instance. Now, we weren't the first to do this, and there's some big companies actually tried about 10 years ago. But I think actually, and I've done quite a bit of benchmarking in the last 15 months, our scope and vision was broader and more ambitious than most other organisations that were doing this for the first time. And importantly, we aim to do it with speed. And I hopefully, as you find going through my presentation, you'll find that agility and speed and cost, as I mentioned already, is an important component. We also felt that it was important to focus on IT innovation. So you have to go back to when IT in Unilever was run in a totally decentralised way. When I was working in Singapore, we were coping with a completely locally run organisation. And I'm only talking about 7 or 8 years ago, if I go back that recently. And by focusing more on IT innovation, that was about enabling growth and efficiency across Unilever, moving to a more centralised organisation and portfolio of projects. So therefore we established IT innovation and a technology group under Willem Elman, who was the CIO at that point in time. And actually, if I look back, and I have done that over the looking at the last 4 years, these two separate organisations delivered some quite impressive achievements. And I just want to give you a few examples of things that were already well underway when I took over. So, for example, as you all know, we've accelerated the closing of our books. In 2013, we were the second fastest FTSE 100 company to report our full-year results. We undertook, and I've already mentioned this, the transition from over 200 discrete and separately run IT systems into 4 core landscapes, a programme that will be finished early next year. We'll have completed the whole journey in pretty short span of time. We've consolidated our European facilities management operation from 800 suppliers into one. That's an enormous simplification across the way we do business. And we've gone from being behind the game a number of years ago to actually being either in terms of middle of the pack or even ahead of the game in some areas in terms of the digital agenda under the leadership of Keith Weed in marketing. And on top of that, we launched a Unilever-wide information management agenda. So an enormous amount done in those 4 years, 3 or 4 years. But I have to say, Paul and John Mark and I agreed that it was time to actually bring these two organisations together. There were more benefits, more synergies to be gained by doing that. And that's what we did in the middle of last year. So in July, we put together one fully integrated team, what we call Enterprise and Technology Solutions. Solutions we like rather than services because it's a more proactive word. It's not just sitting back and waiting for somebody to come and ask you to deliver a service. It's actually much more than that, which is something that I'm trying to instill in the ETS organisation. That's created some great opportunities from having one single agenda. An initial focus was on accelerating the delivery. I already mentioned the achievements. Actually, there was a lot already happening. And I'm going to talk through some examples of the things that we've accelerated in the next few minutes. The team that I lead, also co-lead, is with the Chief Investments Officer, CIO, who actually reports to me, Jane Moran, who joined us in June from Thomson Reuters. And Jane brings 20 years' experience in establishing and running very successful IT organisations, Thomson Reuters, where she came from. I noticed yesterday, by the way, for those of you that read Computer Weekly, and I suspect there's not too many in the room, Jane was actually voted the first woman as the most influential IT person in the UK yesterday. So Jane's already making an impression with a number of you that are from Unilever within the room. So today, ETS is one team with a broad scope of responsibility, and I thought it worthwhile trying to explain a little bit about what we do as I move from left to right across the chart. First of all, HR solutions. That's a whole bunch of HR systems and processes, including, for instance, processing over 1 million pay slips and recruiting about 5,000 people every year. Finance solutions, running Unilever's payments and reporting processes. And Finance Solutions has also played a key role in Unilever's new audit approach, and I'll say a little bit more about that later on. Travel, facilities and real estate, technology and IT solutions, and we have in the business over 60,000 mobiles, 51,000 SAP users, 2 state-of-the-art, they really are state-of-the-art, externally benchmarked data centres, and all of Unilever's networks. Information analytics, which includes a low-cost processing centre in Bangalore, and finally information security, which is a priority for us, was a priority last year, is a priority this year, will be a priority for years to come. I'm sure you read all the things about information security in the papers. But despite the broad scope of responsibility, I think it's important to crystallise everything down into 2 goals that we have. First of all, we need to make Unilever a better, simpler and more agile place to work. Secondly, to drive sustainable and profitable growth by putting in place the right platforms for greater consumer and customer engagement and using information to propel our business forward and reducing costs at the same time, and that's something I've already mentioned. So greater agility, more business benefits and lower costs. So under the 2 core goals, there's 5 broad areas of activity that we have responsibility for, and I'm going to take you through what we're doing, some examples of what we're doing in each of those areas as I move through the next few minutes. First of all, driving organisational simplification. Secondly, enabling employee effectiveness. Thirdly, delivering efficiencies in our infrastructure and processes. Fourthly, providing platforms and tools for growth and reducing our operational costs, and that's last but not least. So now let me take each of these in turn. First of all, how are we driving organisational simplification? So just 12 months ago, led by Paul, Unilever embarked on Project Half for Growth, which was aiming to cut out the bureaucracy and complexity that stands in the way of productivity. It's interesting, and this isn't our organisation, this is generally across organisations. It's estimated that about 25% of employees' time is spent on low-value or inefficient activities. So how can we reduce that percentage? How can we make our employees more productive in their everyday lives? And ETS has led quite a number, or supported certainly quite a number of the Half initiatives. And I just want to give you a few examples of some of the achievements that we've made over the last 12 months. So my first example, the recruitment process. So by identifying where the blockages were and putting greater focus on our internal talent pool, we've streamlined our recruitment processes over the last 12 months. In doing so, we've reduced the time to recruit by over half, and about 90% of roles are now filled by our internal teams rather than external agencies. And in so doing, This is actually, when you put all pieces of the jigsaw together, we've reduced our agency spend by 50% year on year. So a massive win-win for the business. It's a perfect example of delivering a better service to our employees at a lower cost. The same principles, our T&E system. I have to say, I didn't think I'd be talking to a group of investors and analysts talking about Unilever's expenses system, but it's symptomatic of the things that we're trying to do. In the past, any expense claim had to be signed off by a line manager. It led to slow process, the system was slow, payments often being made late. And in spite of that, of course, there was a low percentage of rejections or challenges for the claims that were actually submitted. So by taking the decisions to remove this and putting greater focus, by the way, greater accountability in the back end through audit processes, we've transformed the way something as simple as expenses can be done. The majority of claims are now auto-approved. And that saves, we estimate, something like 20,000 hours of employees' time. By the way, managers' time predominantly as well. In spite of the reduced, on the face of it, management supervision, actually we believe that we've improved control through better back-end audit and through better quality information. So managers get a monthly summary report where they can see and they can look at trends and so on. So overall, again, a win-win for the business. And finally, I think, Jean-Marc, you talked about reports this morning and the work that we've been doing to simplify reports. By renewed focus, I'd like to think driven by the ETS organisation, and Project Half as well, we've been really successful this year in reducing the number of reports. We've taken reports down in aggregate by 40%. By the way, Jean-Marc and I were talking about templates. So a number of reports, actually you might have 100 reports, but we have a single standard template for many of those reports. We've taken down 50% of leadership reports that are identified as being non-critical to the business. So therefore we have fewer, better aligned, higher quality reports that allow our people to make decisions better and faster. And in so doing, by the way, we're also generating cost savings. So the second area I want to move on to is how we are driving agility in the way we are enabling employee productivity. So through organisational simplification, we're giving back time to employees to focus on what's important and to improve their productivity. As a globally agile business, we need to ensure that our employees can perform at their best and collaborate with their colleagues wherever they are. The new technologies and services that we've been introducing and rolling out, I think, have had a pretty big impact over the last 12 months across the organisation. David, you may not have spoken about this in R&D, but we've rolled out electronic lab notebook to 1,000 of our scientists. That's revolutionised the way that our scientists work. It's replaced paper notebooks. It allows information to be shared securely, much faster, reused, and searched by their colleagues across the globe. As well as facilitating lab work, it's also enabled the patents process of first to file, which allows Unilever to secure patents ahead of competition as well. So again, a big win for the R&D organisation. In addition, we've rolled out video conferencing on employees' laptops so they can connect wherever they are in the world. We've also revamped and better connected our video conference network. And that's contributed to a 20% reduction in our travel this year, and actually over the last 2 or 3 years, a bigger percentage. In 2015, we'll also be moving forward and making further strides in this space. So we'll be making our day-to-day HR tasks accessible on mobiles and iPads, and also training programs, for instance. So employees can use time between meetings, when they're travelling, and so on, to actually be more productive and to complete key tasks on the go. And the result of all of this, and I said I don't particularly like the word service, but we do occasionally do a service report and a service survey. So actually ETS this year, in spite of doing through all of those things and driving down costs, we've driven up a 10% improvement in our user satisfaction this year. So you can see the benefits from Half, and the initiatives around employee productivity are starting to have an impact in terms of the way that our people operate. So moving on to the third priority, this is about driving efficiencies in our global infrastructure and process. And this is an area where a GBS organisation really can come into its own. So with the completion of our facilities management transformation that I talked about earlier on in Europe to just one supplier, we've saved in Europe alone about €5 million. We're now in the process of transitioning the rest of Unilever, so we've accelerated this programme. In North America, it'll be completed next year, the rest of Unilever in 2016. And at its close, we forecast annual savings of something like €15 million from this. But it's not just the savings that matter, it's also the simplification. I mentioned that we've gone from 800 suppliers in Europe down to one. It's pretty similar across the globe as well. In addition, and starting to look a bit further forward, we're now bringing real estate into the scope of ETS. So how can we drive efficiency and professionalism into our real estate processes across Unilever, going beyond facilities management, looking at how we can drive the costs down of our offices, of our leases, our rentals, and where we can release cash, as well as driving efficiencies. As part of this change, we're aiming to save about 10% off our lease expense in the next 12-24 months and realise about 20 million of savings by driving a more efficient use of our office space. The efficiency, by the way, just moving on to sustainability, because we have a role to play there as well. This is also helping in terms of Unilever's sustainability programme, with less waste to landfill, for instance, to the tune of something like 1 million kilos. 1 million kilos less waste coming out of our offices alone. We're reducing paper by 30 million sheets. Again, there's a cost benefit to be had from that, as well as an environmental and a sustainability benefit. The transformation of finance solutions has also been an important part of the journey that we've embarked upon. As well as, I mentioned already, reporting our financials much more promptly, we are beating external benchmarks on things like payment on time. We've dramatically improved, and this is not just over the last 18 months, over the last 4 years. We've gone from something like 35-40%, now up to 94% payments on time, which is beating external benchmarks. And the transformation in finance was critical in enabling finance to move its costs down already by 25 basis points to something like 1% of turnover. And John, Mark, you may have talked about that. I know you've talked about that before. And we're aiming to move down by a further 25 basis points over the next 2 to 3 years. Now, we've also established something called the Control Service Centre. I have to say this is something that a number of our auditors want to get better grips with, because it's real competitive advantage that's making a big impact in Bangalore. It's a best-in-class capability that we've got and has enabled us to manage some of Unilever's risks for a lower cost. In turn, by the way, we've also worked with KPMG, our new external auditors, to reduce audit costs by 20% and reducing quality, incidentally. And we're looking to make further opportunities to leverage our capabilities in this area. And in IT, we continue to generate significant efficiencies. We now operate with just 2 data centres, as I've already mentioned, and we're increasingly looking to cloud solutions. I'm sure you're all reading about what's happening in terms of the cloud, which I have to say is not necessarily great for some IT companies, but is great certainly for businesses like ours, helping us drive down costs. Whilst managing IT systems, they're more reliable and easier to maintain. Through these initiatives, we're already driving our IT costs down by 5 to 6%, our IT run costs, I should say. And our ambition is to drive that up to 10% in the next 12 months. So higher standards of service, meeting the business demands at lower costs. So if that's how we're driving efficiencies internally within ETS and across Unilever, how is ECS supporting the business to win in the marketplace? And I saw Case and Peter's presentations talking about some of those things. My first example was Lever Edge, which was actually the thing that Peter didn't use the word Lever Edge, but that's what Peter was talking about. We've actually started that project off in Thailand. It's a partnership between ETS and customer development. Is now being rolled out across Asia. We're already piloting it further in Philippines. We're going to roll out in Vietnam. We're already starting to roll out in Africa. And the platform gives us much greater insight into what our dedicated distributors, our exclusive distributors that Peter was talking about, are selling and where, using analytics, an analytics tool that we've created called IQ. And the evidence so far is that by doing this, we've generated something like 4% incremental growth from the distributors that we've rolled out in, even in more challenging market circumstances, by the way. We're also working together with e-commerce and marketing teams to look at where we can better engage consumers with the brands that they love. Just last month, we launched our first direct-to-consumer website on a standard platform with My Mustard, offering consumers an opportunity to purchase premium mustards that are not available in the shops. I believe available to all of you for a low price of £30, apparently. And the work we're doing with R&D is transforming the way scientists work. I've already mentioned the electronic lab notebook. The use of advanced analytics, for instance, is enabling a big reduction in development time. And I went up to Colworth and witnessed this fantastic capability that we've got. So working with the food category, for instance, we've reformulated 100 dressings products to comply with the USLP salt reduction targets in just 2 years. And I think that's something like 4 times faster than it would have been possible without predictive modelling and without some of the analytics capability that we've now developed. And so here again, ETS is playing an important role in enabling the business to meet sustainability targets. And another example that we're working with Pierluigi's supply chain team is on improving the traceability of products, for instance, giving our consumers the information they want about what's in their products, how it was made, and where it was sourced. So the final area I want to talk about, last but not least, is what we're doing to drive down ETS costs. That's the cost of the organisation that I run. Let me just focus on 3 areas, 3 examples for you. First, headcount. Just bringing together the 2 organisations delivered effectiveness in our overall delivery. It's also enabled us to streamline the team. Over the past year, we've reduced headcount by 15%, whilst driving up performance and delivery. So that's more cash that's available to invest behind IT innovation that I talked about earlier. In looking at our team as well, we've also asked ourselves, have we got the right balance between internal capability and what we've outsourced? And as we build an organisation fit for the future, we've taken the decision to bring some core capabilities back in-house. Now, there's 2 benefits of this. One is about capability, the second one is cost. And I agreed with Jean-Marc and Paul about a year ago that we would insource something like 500 roles across ETS, which will increase our internal talent pool, but it will save €20 million. And so better capability, €20 million of saving. And we've already completed 300 of those, and we're well on the way to overall to getting to the 500. That's another win-win, stronger capability, lower costs. And third, our location strategy. You'd expect, and I jokingly said I fix laptops and toilets, that our team is spread all over the world, wherever we have offices, factories, and so on. And that's true to a certain extent. But we also have migrated some of our resources, quite a large number of our resources, to 8 hubs. And our focus is on 8 hubs, increasingly in emerging markets. And there again, we've agreed to target getting to 70% plus of our resources based in emerging markets in the next couple of years. We've already moved up pretty rapid time, by the way, from 55%, low 50s, to already 60%. We've now crossed over the 60% mark. And as I say, I expect that we'll get to the 70% mark within the next couple of years. The largest of our centres is in Bangalore, and we hosted part of the CEO Forum, an event that Paul holds several times a year in Bangalore earlier this year. It's a centre that opened in 2012 with a very simple rationale. Was to capitalise on our D&E footprint with a state-of-the-art hub which reduces our costs, enhances the speed of delivery, and facilitates innovation. And over the past 2 years, we've scaled up the centre, and we now have something like 1,800 people there, split about 50-50 between internal resources and our outsourced partners. So we host both, we co-locate both in our centre. And the beauty about the centre in Bangalore is that we're able to piggyback on the strength and the reputation of our business in India, Hindustan Unilever. So we piggyback on that, and we're able to recruit the best talented resources. And by the way, in India, the percentage of women in IT is actually a pretty low percentage, but we're actually heading towards a gender-balanced organisation in that setup. So a really great achievement. So I know that's a quick run-through. These are the 5 ways in which we're driving agility whilst reducing costs at the same time. So just to summarise what that means for the business, it means we're enabling employee productivity, we're driving more efficient systems and processes, we're providing platforms and tools to drive growth, but at the same time reducing our costs of our operations and we're aiming to move up to 8 to 10% per year, releasing hundreds of millions of benefits which are landing in the business budgets, whether that's costs or growth, and we are positively affecting cash flow as a result of what we're doing in real estate. I've no doubt that agility and cost reduction are part of one package for us. Whatever the project or system we're introducing, it's got to do both. And by applying the formula, we are transforming the way our business operates. So I hope that with that quick run-through, you've seen that we've come a long way going back to 2010. And over the last 12 months, by bringing the organisations together, we've been able to accelerate savings and benefits through greater focus and alignment. But I still think there's more to do here. And as I look to 2015, the opportunity is once more to raise the bar, find new areas in which to save costs and drive benefits across the business. For example, in the real estate transformation that I already mentioned. At the same time, continuing to provide the company with the services that it needs to drive profitable growth. So with that, thank you very much for listening, and I'm going to hand over to Pierluigi.